Hello guys and welcome to another episode of Stories, the True and the Fictional. Today we have an exciting guest returning, but before I tell you who it is, as always, this episode is brought to you by Rebecca Cassells and the Rising Dawn series. Check it out on Amazon. If paranormal romance with werewolves is your thing, check it out. She is a fan of the show, supporter of the show, and definitely check out her work. But today, as promised, Jack Roney returns. How are you, mate?
Yeah, good, Jamie. G'day, Ryan. Good to see you guys again.
Yeah, you too, mate. It's been a while, but now our viewers can see that we do fulfill our promises, and we don't just say let's get you back on when you bring the next book out. We generally do want to get you back on when you have something a new book, which is obviously why we got you here today. But we'll get to that.
We will. As you are a returning guest, you have icebreakers for our returning guests.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times we're going to do this. Like, if you become a super regular, I don't think we're going to come up with an endless amount of questions, because it is a bit hard work. But we have some new ones for you. So if you're ready, Ryan, do you want to take it away? It was like I had
homework. This was
Well, you're the third person. You're the third returning guest, returning author. So you're only the third person to get these second questions that Jamie has streamed up. So
I had to do a lot of research because I actually found some of these questions quite challenging. So I've got some answers prepared. So we'll see how we go.
I like it. All right. Well, we'll crack into the first one. So this is a nice, easy one. So when you were a kid, and you don't have to say author if that's the case, obviously, but when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
It might sound really corny, but when I was a teenager, for some reason, I just had it in my head I wanted to be a police officer. I didn't know any police, I had no one in the family. I didn't have any police connections at all. I remember I grew up in the town of Toowoomba, Queensland town of Toowoomba, west of Brisbane. I remember this one day I was walking down Ruthven Street, which is any of the locals from Toowoomba will know Ruthven Street. I was walking down Ruthven Street. I probably would have been about 16, I think, and I still remember it like it was yesterday. I saw a police car just driving past and pull up at the lights, and I stood there, and there was a policeman and a policewoman sitting in the car, and I looked at them and said, "That's what I want to do." And I don't know why. Anyway, I was one of the very lucky few that after I finished grade 12, I applied for the police academy and I was accepted. Only in those days, a very small handful of people were selected straight out of high school to go to the police academy, and I was one of those. And so fast track 18 months later, after finishing grade 12, as an 18-and-a-half-year-old, I was a sworn in police officer. So I was very lucky. That was my dream job, and I did that career for 34 years, which I've only recently left. But I was really lucky that my dream job I was able to do.
Well, there you go. I
think like that.
Yeah, you're probably one of the few people that say, yeah, that's what I wanted to do when I was younger, and so I actually went out and did it. So, kudos to that. And obviously, as you said, you've had up until just recently a long, distinguished 34-year career with the police force. So, I applaud that.
That's a bit of a step up since our last guest. He said he wanted to be Wolverine when he grew up.
And look, I get that kids, like I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up, and I get the kids now. It's hard, to make that life decision. And I suppose back in those days it was about choose a career, and that's the career you stick with. And we were very much, it was indoctrinated into us. It's like joining the priesthood. It was a vocation. You join, and that's you're locked in forever until you retire. And it wasn't until many, many years later I even started questioning what would life be like on the outside, and then ultimately led me to making the decision to leave to pursue other interests in life.
Yeah. And that must be a very hard thing to do, because it's not like just like someone like me who works in customer service, and it's very easy to sort of step out of that and go, okay, I want to do something different. But obviously being a police officer for so long, it would be very hard to all of a sudden go for, I'm not going to do that anymore. You've been doing something that is a very, very hard and very, can be sometimes very frustrating, very emotional, very rewarding career. And to just, to go, okay, look, I've had enough. I want to pursue a different route. So it must have, how have you found sort of, I know last time we spoke, you were on a bit of leave in relation to the book. How does it feel now to officially be a civilian, so to speak?
Yeah, I had mixed feelings about it. You know, I was sad. I was sad. I think I missed more the idea of being a policeman than I actually missed being a policeman. You know, the romantic notion of being part of the family of blue, and I guess you'll always be part of that family. But yeah, because you really get and really caught up in the whole culture of the organization, the police family, and you can't just get up and walk away. You are.
Yeah.
It defines who you are. It's not just a job; it really does define who you are, and so it is hard to really make that decision to walk away. But ultimately, I decided, look, I either hang around for a few more years and just retire, or I get out now. I'm a little bit sort of young enough to have a crack at doing some other things, and my goals are to focus more on my writing as a full-time career post my police career. But yeah, no, it was mixed feelings. But now that I've made the decision, I made the decision for my own reasons, and I feel very comfortable with the decision that I've made, and it's quite exciting to just kind of have the freedom now to discover what's next around the corner.
That's
Cool, 100%.
as I said, yeah, it's so Jamie's. We can just walk away. We just be like, yeah, no worries. But you know, the police officer, you know, it's something obviously you try hard to separate your personal life from the job, but that would be one of the hardest jobs to do. So now you can move on to a different chapter of your life, and you know, with the success of the books, you know, sort of pursue another dream. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Excellent.
Now, this next question, I'm going to tweak it a little bit and take you back to, let's say you're in the prime of your police career, and your boss comes in and says, "Hey, Jack, we've got this new sidekick for you. It's an animal and it talks." What animal sidekick, talking animal sidekick, would you want with you on your day-to-day job?
Yeah, well, that's a different context. So I was kind of thinking that if I could have a talking sidekick, what sort of animal would it be? Well, you can probably see. I'll just tilt my camera a little bit. Yep. My Labrador Louis. See,
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Now I've got two dogs. I've got Louis, and my other dog is actually at my feet. I'll see if I can get. I'll see if I can get him for you. So this is Freddie.
Oh.
This is he's very black. Can't sort of. So this is Freddie, my spoodle. He's very cute. He's a year old. So I've often said, we often joke about what would these two dogs sound like if they could talk. And these are the two I chose. If I could have a talking sidekick, I'd have both of these dogs. So I reckon Louis the Labrador would have a real dopey kind of, "Hey fellas," he'd be a real dopey sort of character. Yeah. Whereas Freddie would probably sound like a chipmunk. He'd be high pitched and like a little kid. So we've often, because they're so full of expression, and they just look at you and you sort of say, "I wish I could read your mind. I wish you could talk to me." And we've often joked at home about what would these two dogs sound like. So if I had a talking animal sidekick, I reckon I'd pick both of those characters, and they'd be so vastly different.
Yeah. I think that's their dog and have. Would you obviously being a police officer, they would be fully in uniform, fully trained, and I can see if they're talking, they're not going to be part of the canine unit. They're going to be official partners. So
yeah, they could be sniffer dogs. I reckon they could do that job.
Excellent. All right. Next question is: you are king, queen, supreme leader, president for a day. What's the first thing you do?
This was so hard, and to be honest, I haven't really come up with a real good answer, because I thought of what's something lighthearted and fun. Yeah, I'll do an opera Winfrey, and say you get a car, you get a holiday, and just give everyone something for free for the day, or give them another public holiday. But I think here in Australia we're pretty lucky. We don't need to hand out too many more freebies. And look, I think if you were the prime minister or president or king, you can't keep everyone happy. You can make a decision to do something thinking that you're keeping some people happy. No matter what decision you make, you're always going to have someone on the other side that's going to be unhappy. Yeah. So I don't know. I started, if I can be a little bit more serious for a minute, and I have to be careful that I don't share too many of my own personal views too much in this sort of thing. But I'm thinking, all right, if I had the power of a world leader, what would I do? And I suppose the thing that troubles me the most at the moment in the world is what's happening over in Ukraine. And what could I do as a world leader to stop the really, in my view, it's a crime against humanity, what's happening in Ukraine, what the Russian regime are doing to the Ukrainian people, and what would you do? And I don't know if there was some way to somehow take out that Putin regime, I would do it. Whether it's a case of getting some sort of elite squad to go in there and take them all into custody and remove that regime, because I think until such time as that regime is stood down, we're going to continue to see genocide and crimes against humanity over there. And it's affecting the world. No one is untouched by what's going on over there at the moment. So that for me is probably the big thing that really every day it troubles me. I look at the news, what's going on over there. And so I don't want to sort of take this into a dark phase, but really it is. I think we're going on with our lives and all the trivial stuff in our life. But you think about what, the hardships that those poor people are coming into winter and they don't even have electricity because the civilian population is being bombed. It's just very sad what's happening. So if I had the power to make that stop, I would. But I know the world leaders currently are doing the best to try and resolve this problem, but it's such a tricky thing. So I don't know, that's probably a more complex answer than what you're looking for. But I don't know, if you had the power of a world leader, what would you do? That's a really tricky one to answer.
Yeah, and I think, frankly, you've made a good decision because we haven't got enough public holidays at the moment. I'd much rather see the end of that conflict than have another day off. I know that's a very un-Australian thing to say, but I'll go that way.
We're going to have a King's birthday holiday now. I don't know if
Exactly. So no, that's a solid answer. I reckon
that's a responsible, respectful answer.
Yep, that's a grown-up answer.
I would just mandate that all truck drivers honk their horns when someone does this. Because I've been doing this since I was a kid, and hardly anyone does it. And the disappointment of a child, at least mandated for a child,
Yeah.
I was going to say they probably get scared seeing an almost 40-year-old man standing on the side of the road going, and they don't quite know whether should that mean something or
No, is that the new hitchhiking symbol? No. All right, next one. Now this one's probably a more thoughtful one. But what book or story would you like to see adapted to film? And bonus points for picking your cast and director.
All right, now I did do some research on this one. Now, Jamie, you might have heard of there's this book written by an esteemed author and his partner J.a.Bryden and Chris Park called "The Letters from the Emu War." Now that would be a cracker, I reckon. If that was a movie, you should check it out if you haven't heard of it. I actually when you do some research on, I actually discovered on YouTube there is actually a short film that was filmed. I don't know if you heard of it. 1932, The Great Emu War. It's a bit of a satirical. Tongue-in-cheek kind of comedy sort of thing along the lines of Letters from the Emu War, the same sort of style of kind of thing. And I also see apparently in 2019, did you know that there was a musical adaptation that was workshopped in Melbourne by playwright Simeon Ulioglu and composer James Court?
I didn't know about that one.
And further to that, there's also a movie retelling of events written by John Cleese. And Monty Franklin and Rob Schneider is slated for release in 2022. So I don't know if that ever happened or is going to happen.
Well,
but to finish answering, I did actually. Sorry, keep going.
No, well, it's funny you say that because I knew about the movie and I actually got in touch with John Cleese's PA, and I sent him a copy of my book.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but I haven't heard back or anything. Even if he's thrown it in the bin, I can say that John Cleese has held my book, and it's John Cleese. But yeah.
And do you know whether that film ever went into production? Or?
No, well, I think it got set back because of COVID and all that. But they're going to film it in Australia. So,
right, yeah. Well, and then to answer the question around director, there is a director, Glendon Ivan, who directed the Gallipoli miniseries in 2014. So that was really impressive work. And so I did some research on well-known Australian directors, and he was one. And then I reckon Eric Bana would be a great lead character in the Letters from the Emu War.
Oh, yeah.
He would be my pick for a lead character.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I love that answer. And so does my friend Chris Park. I did not expect that, but I actually did. Before I wrote the book, I actually wrote a screenplay for it, and it almost got made once upon a time. But everything fell through, sadly, because they say only 1% of screenplays get made. So
yeah,
no.
Oh wow.
How Who knows it? Who knows? Someone might hear this podcast and they might pick up on the idea.
Yes,
John
that's
Cleese
it.
might be listening as we speak.
He might be.
There you go. All right, keeping with our theme of our last question from the first round. So Elon did his time machine that you borrowed about a year ago and has put you in charge of organizing a dinner party of historical figures. Who do you put on your guest list? And I like to say maybe say 5 maximum.
Oh, well, I've got more than 5, but I'll quickly run through the names. Now, I didn't want to be sexist. I just come up with who are the funniest people I can think of, and there's a whole bunch of comedians. And I just thought if you put them all in one room, so it wasn't intentional to exclude females, but the names that came to mind were male. So if you could put Benny Hill, Robin Williams, Paul Hogan, Jim Carrey, Graham Kennedy, Chris Rock, Will Ferrell, Steve Martin, Eddie Murphy, Steve Carell, Mike Myers, John Cleese, and Jerry Seinfeld. If you could put all those people in the same room, that would be one hell of a conversation.
Now, would you get them at their prime, at their like career prime?
Yes. Yeah, they'd all have to be at their career prime.
Now, I'm worried that this would actually cancel out the funniness. Like, you know, when you get too much funny in one room at one time, would it cancel? You know.
Yeah, I think when you got funny people together, sometimes they're pretty boring. So I don't know. It'd be interesting just to be a fly on the wall.
Yeah.
You know what, if it gets to the stage where it's just there's
give plenty of booze, that might loosen them up.
Benny Hill there, you can always just play the theme and just have a couple of birds run in, and he'll just them around, and that'll liven the party up.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I look, that would be a dinner party I'd like to go to. There's quite a few of my favorite actors in there. So as long as you said Chris Rock and not Will Smith, which is I want a reappearance of what has to happen.
Maybe just have them two together.
Get them to hash it out. You know.
Yeah, I think they've kissed and made up, haven't they?
I think officially in front of the cameras, I think they have. But I think there's probably still a little bit of bad blood. You know, maybe we can get them to settle it in the ring one day, but we'll just have to see.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for answering those. But now we're going to talk about your book. I got a copy.
Cool. I've got a copy here. I just so happen to have one.
Ryan, where's yours?
Mine's on the bookshelf, so I'm in the office at the moment, so I apologise. But I was one of the first. I actually pre-ordered it, and I got my copy quite a while. And I've also a digital edition on my iPad, so I have bought it twice.
Well, thanks very much. My sales doubled.
I like to have a copy for my digital library, and then obviously for the bookshelf as well. So
yeah.
Well, thanks for your support. I appreciate it.
That's all right.
Now that I have a job, I intend to buy more. Do the Ryan thing, like essentially buy anyone who comes on, I want to buy their book and stick it on my shelf. So
that's what I have. I have an area of people that we've interviewed. So when people come to the house, I'm like, here's my shelf of books, of my interviews.
I've actually got it's out of camera view now, but beside my desk here, I've actually got another bookshelf of all the books I've gathered through fellow authors, people that I've met and we've exchanged books. I've probably got about 20 books there, and some of them I read and some I need to. I've got another big bookshelf full of like the James Pattersons and all those sort of commercially famous authors. But yeah, all these local authors I've met recently, all Australian authors, I've got all their books. So I think that's the one thing we can do to support each other is read each other's books and review each other and support each other.
Definitely 100%. Now with this brand new book of yours, I've got one little question. Stranger Things much?
Yeah. So as you can see from the cover, I'm having trouble. The main this one's actually a gloss. I've got 2 editions. One's a gloss cover. It tends to reflect the light a little bit more. One's a matte cover. But the themes were the blood moon, the old steam train, and the 3 boys on an adventure were the 3 kind of key themes. You can see the bats are flying above the moon.
Yep.
And then also I wanted the font of the title to look like or to resemble that kind of Stranger Things kind of theme, because it's very similar to Stranger Things, where the first part of the book is based in 1982, so it's got that real 80s kind of feel to it. Coming of age, boys on an adventure, similar to what's that the story Stand By Me, that based on a Stephen King novel. I wanted that kind of 1980s kind of feel to it. So that's how that the book cover it needed to feature those key themes. Plus, I wanted the title to have that. And the fact the publisher said to me, "Next time, can you have a shorter title, please?" It was an absolute pain trying to fit the ghost train in the Scarlett movie. So I copped a bit of a slap for having too long of a title.
I don't know. I think it's perfect length. But yeah, before we dive in, do you just want to give us an overall plot? What's it about? And then we can, nitpick and ask you all the little questions.
So it's a historical mystery with twisted time travel. So as I said, it's probably a combination of Stand By Me, that's based on a Stephen King book. There's a really famous movie called Stand By Me, coming of age, and the butterfly effect, combination of two, and probably with a bit of a blending of Stranger Things as well. So it is targeted for a young adult audience. So basically, it's a fictional story based around a factual train crash that happened very close to where I live. Out near Sanford, just outside of Brisbane. In 1947, a train crashed on Labor Day. A number of people sadly died. 16 people died. A lot of people were injured, and it's still Queensland's worst ever rail disaster. And it occurred to me that whole story is pretty much been lost to history. That whole rail line used to go out from where I am at Ferny Grove, which is one of the outer suburbs of Brisbane, all the way out bushland out to a town called Dayborough. And that railway line has since been pulled up and doesn't exist. And there's just a road, a housing estate there. So where that rail line used to run, and there's an old bat tunnel, which is the old train tunnel. That's still there. You can still go to it, but the rail line has since been pulled up. And I went exploring this one day in the bush, and I discovered all this, and I started doing research about this old train line that used to run out there. I kind of had this idea of the ghost train, the forgotten train. It's just metaphorically, it's a ghost train. And then I blended that with this concept of this really rare blood moon called a super blue blood moon, which actually is a thing. It's a very rare blood moon that happens only every 35 years. So I somehow came up with this idea of blending the two themes together. What would happen if this rare blood moon occurred on the anniversary of the train crash, and these two significant events created this time slip, and this kid goes missing, he vanishes. And so it's all about the mystery as to what happened to this boy that's vanished. And then we discover later that there's a bit of a time travel event has occurred, and then it sets in motion a whole range of kind of things to unravel this mystery, and then it goes across different time frames.
So how much actual research did you, like, how far did you go in your research when you were, I know I've seen on Facebook you've been out there a few times from what you've put up. So how much actual, aside from just going out there, what kind of research did you do? I know the internet's always good, but did you have any other sources where you go to some of the small towns?
Yes, as I actually went out. Yeah, so I kind of immersed myself by physically going to the location, get a feel for, I actually stood at the location where the train crash occurred. There's a little monument on the side of the road. It's just out the front of a house now, and cars are driving past, but where that road is used to be a rail line, and on the sweeping bend is where the train crash occurred. So I've been there and went to the Bat Tunnel, and I walked the bush track with it. So I really immersed myself in that sort of location. But in terms of research, I did a lot of research through the Queensland State Archives, and it's amazing what historical information you can get from websites like Trove, which are all the old newspapers. And I got a lot of information from Trove, but also the Queensland State Library and State Archives have got some really good information. So I just wanted to, in my first scene where I'm describing the train crash, I wanted it to be as factually accurate as possible.
Yeah.
And the retelling of the train crash is told through the eyes of actual witness statements, which I read. So what the passengers were experiencing when the train was out of control and when it crashed, and what they saw in the chaos. And so all that was, I wanted to keep it factually accurate. But then I created this whole fictional storyline weaved around a factual event, which then I had more scope to be a little bit more creative. I had to be very mindful that I wasn't going to offend anyone that was directly impacted by the actual train crash. And I still say that it was done in memory of those people that gave their lives, and in memory of the people that came to the aid and those heroes on the day. So I wanted it to be seen as a respectful account of what happened, and also to bring it to the attention of people who live locally who don't know the story. So to keep the story alive. So that was kind of my main intention. And then I just came up with this whole fanciful fictional story. It's a coming of age story, and wrapped it around. So it's one of those fictional stories linked to a factual event.
Much like Letters from the Emu War, just throwing it out there. Yeah, but look, I started reading it today, and the prologue, I absolutely love it, because it's that Yeah, like you know when you watch a movie and you know something's going to go wrong, like you're like, this is too happy. Like the start of it is joyful. The the I think I can kind of up the hill, and then it slowly just starts to go, something's going wrong. So I absolutely love that prologue. But then I noticed you switched to the first person in the first chapter. Was that an intentional thing to keep like the timeline separated, or what was the idea behind that?
Yeah, so the prologue was more of just a third person, or kind of like a narrator's retelling of the crash.
Yep.
And it's like a bird's eye view of what happened. So it's like if you picture a narrator telling the story about the train crash, sets the scene. And then chapter 1 is in the eyes of Toby McIntyre. He's the main character, and the entire story is told through his eyes. The first part of the book is told through his eyes as a 12-year-old in 1982 when his friend goes missing, and then it fast forwards to present day. He's a guy in his 40s, and he's still having issues because of what happened in his childhood. And it turns out another one of his friends goes missing on the anniversary of the train crash, and then all these things happen, and then it jumps ahead to when Toby's an elderly man. So it's 35-year increments, which coincides with the cycle of this moon. And then the book ends at the very beginning. So the book then ends where it started, but the chain of events have changed. So it takes you on a journey through Toby's entire life, pretty much. But because of the time travel element, it takes you back to where the story started, but then it sends you off in a different direction and kind of leaves you wondering what if.
Man, that I'm sorry, that is a Netflix show or a movie.
That was going to lead into the next question that I have, because we all know I like to go off book. Sometimes I don't even read the questions that JB prepares, but I agree with you about the end. That's where you get the butterfly effect kind of feel for it, because obviously in that movie, Ashton Kutcher spends the whole movie trying to get back to change things, and you get that feel from the book. But in talk, same with Toby, and obviously the different stages of his played out in the book. If, say, for example, Netflix came or Amazon Prime came and backed the money truck up, who would you cast as young Toby, present day Toby, and old man Toby?
Oh, geez. That's a hard one. So obviously that'd have to be Australian characters.
It's up to you. It's your call.
What Australian actors? Yeah. I don't want to sound like a broken record. I love Eric Banner. I love it. I loved him.
Yeah.
I loved him in The Dry.
Yeah. That was such a good movie.
I loved him as Poiter.
Yep.
I loved him. I loved him in Troy, in some of his big blockbuster movies. But as an Australian actor, he for me. Oh, there's another. What's his name? Oh, I can't think of his name right now. He also wrote a book. I'll think of it later. But no, if off the top of my head, I'd have to say Eric Bana would be great for the adult Toby.
Yeah.
Maybe. I reckon Paul Hogan now. Yeah. Because Toby becomes an old man, so Paul Hogan now as an old man would be great as Toby as an old man. As far as who would be the child actor, don't know. I don't know the names of any child actors that could play the role.
No. Look, Eric Bana's fantastic. It's just I will everything he does, I'll give it a go. Whether it's going to be whatever the Republic have said about it, but yeah, he was fantastic in The Dry. That was really good, and he was in a season of a show called. It had come to me. It was like a true crime thing where he played the father. I forget the name of it. It was on Netflix, but he's fantastic. So I agree. I can see him in as adult Toby, 100%. And Paul Hogan. I mean, he needs the money at the moment, so throw him a bit of cash. And, he's fantastic. So can't go wrong there.
The actor I was thinking of, his name is Matt Nable.
Matt Nable. Yeah.
He's written a novel called Still, which I really enjoyed. So he's probably not a household name, but I think most people, if they saw Matt Nable, they'd know who he is. Real gritty Australian actor. I reckon he's really cool. I like him.
I will tell Jamie, you would know him as Ra's al Ghul from the Arrow series.
Oh, all right, yeah.
I first found Matt Nable in The Final Winter, the movie that came out probably about 10, 15 years ago. But yeah, he pops up now and then. I'm watching a show called Mr. In Between, another Australian show, and he got a pivotal part in that too. So yeah, he's awesome.
He was in one of the Riddick movies.
Yeah, he was too. Yeah, he pops. He has a habit of popping
American
up.
characters as well. So There's
I
some,
think
there's
that's
some,
a solid.
there's some fantastic Australian actors out there. So I mean, it's every author's dream to have you. You know, I'm very
Yeah.
jealous of Jane Harper. She's had her books converted, and Trent Dalton. He's getting Boy Swallows Universe produced into a series. It's being filmed in Brisbane as we speak.
Oh
So
wow.
there's some fantastic Australian talent out there.
Yeah. We'll have to get it onto our good friend Matt Holmes. He makes great movies. No one seems to want to fund him, you know. But he's brilliant at everything he does. So I've noticed that you've been on a bit of a tour with this book, and I noticed that you went to a school and they did art about your book. Like, how'd that happen? And tell us about that experience, because that's very cool.
Yeah, that was excellent. And I'm hoping that's going to be part of an ongoing relationship. My local high school, it's actually the high school where my three kids went to. And so it's the closest school. It actually features a little bit, there's a reference to it in the book, because my book is based in the local area, Ferny Grove, Sanford. And one of the teachers from the school came to my book launch, and she was she taught my kids at high school in art, and we got talking. And she said, and she read the book and loved it. And she said, there's so many really sort of visceral scenes that I could get my students to depict in artwork. I'll go back and talk with the school, see if I can do it as an art project for my kids that do this special art program. So what she did was she took the book to the students, and they all got to read a particular scene from the book, and then they use their imagination to convert what they read and what they imagined, and to convert that into some sort of artwork. And then I was invited to go to the school and talk to the students about my book. And then for them and they were really stoked to show me what they'd drawn. I was really stoked because they were doing artwork based on words that I'd written, which was really cool to see how they interpreted it. And I posted a lot of the photos on my Instagram account. So I urge anyone, if you're keen to have a look, check out the Jack Roney Instagram account. And I posted all the images and some fantastic imagery. So I was absolutely blown away by that. So I'm really keen to sort of work with students along with those sort of ideas, whether it be writing or artwork.
Yeah. It was definitely something I feel the kids need more encouragement in. Like, we need, more creative people out there, more, I know I found a short story I wrote the other day. I was going through some old boxes and I found a short story. I guess it could be my very first fan fiction about X-Men and Street Sharks and Ninja Turtles or something that I wrote when I was like 10 years old. And I'm going, this is awesome. I think that what you're doing is great, because it's going to encourage a whole lot of kids to be more creative and probably start writing their own books.
Yeah, and my message to the kids was, I'm not an artist. When I was a kid, I used to enjoy doing artwork about Battlestar Galactica, when the first Battlestar Galactica came out in the 1980s, and you couldn't record things off TV. If you missed an episode, you just have to imagine what happened, because the kids at school told you. And I'd imagine what I missed if I missed an episode, and I would draw these spaceship battles and duels and things. And I said to the kids, don't let people stifle your creativity. If you feel the urge to draw or write, don't let people discourage you if it's not seen to be the cool thing to do. Follow your passion. And I kind of think, I look back in my childhood, and particularly in high school, I probably started to show an interest in writing. I used to do really well at English, and my short stories always were the ones selected to read out in front of the class, and my poem won a poetry competition and whatever. But then I went to the police academy, and then life got in the road, and I never pursued it. It wasn't until many years later that I had this urge to write, and it sort of came out of me, and I tried again. So my message to the kids was, as a writer, when you're writing, the trick is to give the reader enough information that they can fill the gaps themselves with their imagination, that you're not describing everything. Just give them one or two bits of information, and then they will use their own imagination. And that's exactly what they did when they did that artwork.
No, I think that's a very good thing. And I'd say the more you can get the youth away from phones and tablets and doing this kind of stuff, you laugh, and you get more creative people out there, and you get more illustrators and writers. Obviously we've discussed in relation to combining the true event with obviously a fictional world. Is there anything else that that's happened in world or Australian history that you think, I'd kind of like to do a similar thing with that story?
It's funny, I started thinking about it, and I started doing some, because I love history, and there's a scene in the book where they go to Toowong Cemetery, and I actually spent a day walking around Toowong Cemetery. For those who know Brisbane, Toowong Cemetery, it's closed now, or it's open. You can still, but it's not an active cemetery anymore. It's fallen, but it's some really old graves. and you walk around and the history is just amazing. They do ghost tours and a whole range of things. So I love history. And after doing research about this local train crash, I also discovered that, I can't remember, it was in the 1800 and something, in the Brisbane River, there was a ferry sunk, and a lot of people, this accident where two boats collided and a ferry sunk and all these people drowned in Brisbane City on the river.
Oh, wow.
Another story of a tragedy. And I'm thinking, maybe, again, I really like the idea of looking at a real sort of event, and that's got some historical significance. Because you look at so many stories, things like movies like Pearl Harbor or Titanic, all these kind of movies which are based on factual stories. But I'm sure those characters in the movie Pearl Harbor were not real characters, but they use those fictional characters to tell the real story. So that's kind of, I like that idea. I like the idea of using a fictional story or fictional characters to convey something that actually happened. And then you can also have that creativity to weave in your own story.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I love it. I know, like, I just watched Pride and Prejudice and Zombies the other day. I know it's a little bit of a different take, but that guy that did Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, and the way he melds the two, worlds together, it's like perfect. Like, you almost go, okay, that makes too much sense.
Yeah.
And they're a good fun watch at the same time. But I'm definitely with you. I love history, and now you're gonna have me. I'll probably message you every now and again, going, "Oh, I just heard about this historical event that would be cool," But 100%. I think that's awesome.
I know some authors that have done retellings of the Ned Kelly story. There's a couple of authors who are my publisher, Hawkeye Publishing here in Brisbane. There's a couple of authors who have done some stories on that. So again, a retelling, a reimagining of what would happen if the story went in a different direction.
Yeah.
So I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
And it's a really good way of keeping Australian history alive too.
Yeah. It's something that it's like, I remember in school, I think we learned a little bit about Ned Kelly, but we didn't learn much about, Australia. It was more, World War II, overseas. Like, there's so much history in such what little time we've had, as a country. So what's next for you? Is there another follow-up book to this book? Is there anything particular you're working on at the moment?
So for the current book, Ghost Train and Scarlet Moon, I think I'll kind of just keep that as a standalone. I don't want to sort of diminish it by trying to do a sequel. I think it has enough strength as a standalone.
Yep.
Whereas with my crime series, when I finished The Angels Wept, my first Detective Jared O'Connor book, I felt, even though I wrapped up that story, I felt there was a lot more room to keep going with new stories, and that's where story number 2 came. It's called The Demons Woke, and then book 3, The Shadows Watch, has been written as well. So I've now been signed by my publisher who published The Ghost Train, has also signed me for my 3-book deal. So we're going to re-release The Angels Wept with brand new book covers. They're currently being designed at the moment. I've also had an audio book produced of The Angels Wept, and we're going to hopefully launch that soon. That's a fantastic professional voice narrator, Chris Miller, based down in Sydney. He's a professional voice actor. He's done a fantastic job with the audio book for The Angels Wept. So what you're going to see early next year is The Angels Wept, which is book 1 of my crime series, which, as you said, is vastly different to my young adult book. And book 2 of my crime series, called The Demons Woke, they're both coming out early to mid-year next year. And then there'll be all the marketing and launching of that. Still just going through some final editing and final polishing of that before that launches next year. And then I'll have to focus on doing a major rewrite of book 3. It's only in a very rough draft at the moment, but the story's been written. I've just got to go and do some editing. So at the moment, everything's about just editing existing work. I don't have anything new on the go at the moment. I'm just really busy getting everything in the can that I've got on the go right now, and all the marketing. Currently, I'm doing a lot of speaking events at libraries, schools, and that sort of thing for my current book, The Ghost Train and the Scarlet Moon. And I suppose I'll continue that while I've got a bit of momentum. I've got some writers' workshops that I'll be delivering at libraries. And next year, I think I'll be pretty busy with my crime series. And then what comes after that? Well, I've got, all these ideas. Do I write another young adult book along this kind of style, or do I, add to my crime series? I don't know yet. I guess I'll see what strikes me, and then I'll hook in. Once I get the bug, I'll decide what I do then.
Cool. Well, we're looking forward to it regardless.
Definitely.
So you just want to tell people where they can find you, buy your books, learn more about you, and follow your adventures.
Yeah, probably the best starting point. Yeah, the best starting point is my website, jackroney.com.au. My publisher is Hawkeye Publishing. If you just Google Hawkeye Publishing, they're a Brisbane-based traditional publisher, a fantastic family-based publisher that supports Australian authors. The ebook is on Amazon and all the usuals, but the paperback for The Ghost Train can be ordered through Hawkeye Publishing, and you get discount postage. So that would be the first point. So you could probably either go to my website or social media. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, and so either Hawkeye or my website.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Jack.
No, thanks for having me. And just one last shout out. It's also remiss of me not to mention that my book, I know you probably would have noticed that at the beginning of every chapter are these really cool illustrations.
Yep.
That have been done by Paul O'Sullivan. He's a professional illustrator. So we decided to do illustrations at the beginning of each chapter. Some of them are just, absolutely beautiful diagrams, hand sketched. That's the moon. My favorite one is the bat flying out of the tunnel. Here's an example of the old ticket being punched. Here it is. Here's my favorite. And he was very limited because it had to be a banner shape.
Yeah.
So you can see the bats flying out of the old train, disused train tunnel. So that's at the beginning of each chapter. But then the chapters that don't have a specific illustration have got a picture of a train. But the train, if you start flicking through the book, you'll see that the train is progressively moving across the page. So it looks like it's one of those animated things. As you flick the book, the train at the beginning of each chapter, the train's moving across the page. So cool. I was very lucky. I was mentored by Professor Gary Crew. He's quite a well-known author. He's won numerous awards, and he introduced me to his illustrator, and I was able to collaborate with him, and he brought to life a lot of my scenes by writing these amazing illustrations. So we've been able to pitch this as a graphic novel. So that's how this kind of morphed into a young adult book that we've had. We've got illustrations. It's beautifully drawn that represents the scene. And he would just say, look, what do you want this to represent? And I'd tell him and describe it. And so, we'd go through the scene, and he'd just come up with this amazing image. So, I think that kind of adds an extra dimension to the book. So it's important that I give Paul O'Sullivan a big shout out for the work that he's done.
Oh, definitely. I must say, like, ever since I was a kid, anytime I open up a book and there's a picture, I get excited. I mean, I don't want it all to be pictures, but I get that, it's a little insight. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on. And Ryan, do you want to have any final thoughts?
Buy his books, please.
buy his books. Yes.
I'm a staunch Jack Roney supporter since I read the first book, and then I made sure I pre-ordered the second book. I have them, as I said before, I have them both on digital and physical copy, and we need to support our Aussie authors. So
100%.
Please jump onto his website, get on publishing, tell them how much you love the book, and hopefully we'll get many, many more books from Jack in the future.
Yeah, that's the plan.
And with that note, thanks guys for listening, and we'll catch you next time.